And welcome back to the Mr. Constitution class. It is about 10 minutes to 3. So if you guys want to skip ahead to the start of the class, you go ahead about 10 minutes. Warhamster and I are just going to sit here and chit chat for a little bit while people come in. Anything, by the way, we got a strike on our channel. I didn't know if you knew that.
No.
Yeah, got a strike because we put misinformation out. We were talking. I don't know what it was because it's been removed.
Oh, which show was it last week?
No, it was the one on the 20. It was the one about Amendment 22, 23, and 24. I think.
Can't think what we could have said that would get a strike, but it is YouTube. Their
censors are. We were talking about I'm sure we were talking about the election.
So Twitter files had another big drop today. Did you read the ones from today?
What, number 8?
Yeah.
No, I didn't read number 8.
Well, this morning that dropped, and the whole focus was the Pentagon and how they have been using armies of just using propaganda, mostly in the Middle East, and some of our foreign adversaries, but they're not supposed to be doing it. They said they weren't doing it, but they were.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it gets kind of fun. So Kim.com, who's pretty big influencer on Twitter, and about 5 or 6 others, were doing a Twitter Spaces show today talking about that, and they kept getting dropped and muted. Like the host was getting kicked off his own channel. And it was happening. I listened to it about 20 minutes, and it was happening. So they were basically speculating. Well, either this is fifth column, somebody still at Twitter is doing this to us, or it's coming remotely, and the Pentagon is trying to keep us from talking about it. But that has not been resolved. Elon Musk follows a few of those influencers, so he definitely knows this is going on. And then it got even more interesting. Sundance from Conservative Treehouse is speculating that Twitter is censoring. They're not putting out all of the information. They are holding stuff back. And he makes a pretty good argument. So the stakes are getting fun on the Twitter files.
Well, so what does he say that not all the information is being released on purpose?
Yeah. One of the comments today was that the writer today was who is it? Lee something or other, was saying, yeah, all this information I got, I'd made no agreements with Twitter to do anything, but all the information I got was given to me by a Twitter lawyer. So there is somebody that is reviewing the data before it gets sent out. So makes you wonder.
Well, I thought that was James Baker, and then he got fired.
Well, but remember there were still like 13 other former FBI employers at Twitter at the time, and it could just be someone who's politically aligned, But Sundance's speculation is it's all being done to protect Obama. So I could see where he might go there. I've never necessarily thought that Obama was irreplaceable or untouchable compared to some other people that I think pull the strings. The other fun one today, hey Devil Dog, hey Michelle. If you think about it, the CIA just confirmed that they played a part in the JFK assassination, and it's not even making headlines. It just makes you. Think about how insane that is. Just the facts that have come out in the last month of what our government has done. It's stuff we've always speculated, but to have
We're just wacko conspiracy theorists. That's all.
Yeah, it's funny how everything ends up coming true. I am looking forward to what they drop on the COVID information. See if there's any censorship there, which of course there was. Who was Twitter talking to, taking advice on who to ban, and if that came straight from Fauci's office, there will be questions to be answered. If the NIH has a direct pipeline into Twitter, like a lot of these other government agencies, that's not going to be okay.
Well, I'm interested to see any information on FTX giving money. FTX giving money to fund ivermectin studies.
I don't recall anything about that. So where are you going with that?
The Together study.
And FTX would have funded it, and why?
Well, FTX
that,
gave him like 18 million.
Is that the one that shot down ivermectin?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. That's now I see where you're going with that. Yeah, I think I did hear some whispers along those lines. I've not seen anything about that confirmed. But that wouldn't come out on Twitter.
Right.
So what else do we got going on today? Well, have I talked to you about Sullivan and Cromwell? Yeah, of course we did it last week. Did you get a chance to read SBF's pre-prepared remarks before he was supposed to appear in Congress last week?
Mm-mm.
I'll track those down for you and send them to you. That's a must-read. It's a big plot twist. It makes you think that he was basically complaining about Sullivan and Cromwell making him file bankruptcy and saying, "Oh, we could have saved all this," but there are things moving on that front at some point. Conspiracy theory equals spoiler alert for the fact. Yeah, stuff that we were getting banned from Twitter on a year ago are now coming out as true. Yeah, and it's almost it's almost consistent. The timeline between someone getting banned for speaking something and it becoming true is about 6 months.
That is true.
The other fun part is all the talk about Twitter heading towards bankruptcy. So why would Elon Musk pay $44 billion for a company that is bleeding out that badly? And remember, it was a Obama-appointed judge who forced him to finish the transaction. But it's, look, the benefit of going to bankruptcy for Elon is, he can renegotiate his deal with the creditors, and probably so if he has a pre-pack in place, he could maintain ownership. He also did a poll the other day, says,
about stepping down.
And then and of course it was like 57% said step down. Now the speculation is that there were bots that were voting in mass. He may have used it as a bot trap. But the fun part I thought is they want to redo the poll, say without the electronic voting machines, meaning bots. But also you want to someone was saying you should make it for paid customers only, ones who paid their $8 a month for a blue check. Only they can vote because they have stake in the game. And Elon has responded to those suggestions and said possibly. Of course, if he did step down and he was going to get a new CEO, who would you want it to be? That's a fun one.
Well, I heard that there was not speculation, but I heard the potentiality was possibly Kushner would be in line.
He's a real estate guy, but he's got executive experience. Tell you the guy who I would love to see, who could actually do a good job on that, would be Patrick Byrne. A lot of people are saying, "Hey, what about Mike Lindell?" No, he's a base pillow merchant. He's not a tech. He's proven doesn't know much about technology. He can't even articulate his certain claims when it comes to electronic devices. But I think Patrick Byrne could do a very good job. And I'm still on the agreed raging smirk. Kushner's like a lot of people. If you
I wasn't saying that I wanted it to be him. That's not what I. Please don't misunderstand.
No, of course not. You read enough. No, he was Kushner's at the World Cup final on Sunday in the same box with Musk. So that's probably where the rumor came from. I know that. Who is it? Peter
Thiel?
No. No, the guy used to work for the Trump. Peter Navarro. He's pretty much anti-Kushner, and he's thrown him under the bus quite a bit, and he's not the only one. A number of people close to Trump have said that it was Kushner who gave him some of his worst ideas. What do you know about the rumor that Kushner, or not the rumor, the allegation that Kushner got $2 billion from the Saudis? Is that factual?
I haven't heard.
Yeah, I've seen the accusations thrown around a lot. I've not looked into it to see if there's any substance to it. It's absolutely a left-wing talking point. But sometimes they get things right. So
I may let you guys do the show today. I don't know how well I feel.
Sorry to hear that. My father came down with a positive test for COVID. He's feeling very poorly.
Yeah.
I pulled up Kushner, and the third thing was Kushner Saudi deal. Headline says $2 billion. So did he get a $2 billion investment? Yeah, they're using it as a anti-Hunter Biden talking point, obviously. Of course, if he did do that, if he was using his father-in-law being in office to get conduct business, that's probably sanctionable.
Very likely.
Have we heard? I heard from Doug earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I know he didn't have class today, so he shouldn't have an excuse for being late, but let me text him.
Well, I sent the invitation to every address.
I know, I looked.
I saw a meme today. I thought it was very apropos that too many people are fighting for a seat at the table that Jesus would have flipped.
That's funny. It's good. Here's a fun one. Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote a very lengthy Twitter thread talking about why she is supporting Kevin McCarthy for Speaker of the House. Now, she made some good arguments and some not so good. She goes, "Well, I've gotten to know him. He's changed his spots the last couple of years after seeing everything that's happened." And she goes, "Most of these people are just like Never Trump, split apart the Republican Party. Now we've got the Never Kevins. And these people are just doing it because they don't like him." Well, that's not why people aren't supporting him. They're supporting him because of his record. And, if he's changed his spots in the last 2 years, explain to me why, as the main controller of the California GOP, he sabotaged every grassroots candidate. Because that happened. I was on the ground watching it. I talked to the candidates. We know that happened. Kevin McCarthy absolutely controls the California GOP. That's just a known fact. He's got more delegates in his pocket than anybody else. The only way to. So that's going to be interesting. What happens with the GOP chair? That election will be held next month, about 45 minutes from me up in Dana Point, and there will be people protesting, I believe. Darren says MTG is not what she seems to be. Are any of them? I mean, how many politicians in our lifetimes have lived up to expectations, if you had any? I would say not enough.
Definitely not enough.
I do think she's a fighter, and she probably has our best. I think she's got our best. I think she's got good intentions. She may just, not play the game quite as well, or can be fooled. I am not.
Did you get a response from Doug?
Not yet. And I called him earlier and he didn't call back, so I don't know what's going on. He knows it's Tuesday. I want you to do that right now. I'll try to do a little monologue while you're doing that. So Harmeet Dillon is, of course, campaigning very hard to be RNC chair, and she might do a better job than Ronna McDaniel. But I was not that impressed with the fact that Harmeet announced her run on Election Day when she was supposed to be on the ground in Maricopa County, and the RNC lawyers are picked up and left the day of the vote and left all the candidates to fight for themselves. So she did the same thing in the Senate, the Senate runoff in Georgia. She was making the rounds instead of helping Herschel Walker by being on the ground and rallying, what have you. She was making the rounds on all the TV shows, all the network broadcasts. So her priorities are pretty clean. In Maricopa, we got 2 bits of good news. The Kari Lake case was ruled to go forward on 2 of the 10 counts, which is good. It means it gets it to trial. Bad news was the judge says that it has to be they have to be able to prove fraud to have any actionable, and I disagree with that. If disenfranchisement of voters happened, and it did, I think, it's just a question of how much. It doesn't matter whether it was malfeasance or misfeasance. It doesn't matter why it happened. It's the fact that disenfranchisement happened. It means the election, probably needs a remedy. Raging Smirk says Harmeet Dillon's interview last night on Tim Pool was excellent. I will check that out. That'll be worth watching. Thank you. Hey, Kikio. And the other bit of good news that just broke was Abe Hamadah's case is going to move forward to trial as well. So that was 2 wins in a row, and he's got the stronger case of the 2. And he did not have the limitations. Ron, were you able to get through to him?
Mm-hmm.
And is he coming?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Did you say when?
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Yeah, Abe Hamadah's got a much stronger case. Now, my question would be, let's say Abe Hamadah wins his election challenge and maybe gets a redo. Does that mean everyone else does as well? Hey, Doug.
My friends, are a creature of routine, and I am outside in the routine because I have no classes. And so I apologize that being out of routine screwed up my routine.
It's all right. Well, I was telling Warhamster, I'm not feeling too good today, so I'm going to bow and let you 2 guys handle the class, and I'll just monitor from the back end. So,
okay.
Au revoir.
All right, Ron. Hope you feel better.
Yeah, I'm such a creature of routine. So since I didn't teach a class this morning, and I wasn't trying to hurry to get here like I usually do, I spaced it. So,
well,
but I'm here.
Well, let us finish up the topic. We were talking about Harmeet Dillon. Raging Smirk said it was a Charlie Kirk.
Not a fan.
Well, that's what we were talking about. But now we do like her more than Harmeet. I mean, you got to have a change. I mean, just the status quo can't continue. That event that Charlie Kirk had out in Arizona I watched enough of that on RSBN. I'm sorry, Real America's Voice. It looked like a really good event. I think I'm going to try to make that next year. It was Bannon, Charlie Kirk, a few of the other guys. Jack Posobiec was there, but apparently Tim Pool was there. And for the big victories, Tim Pool usually makes everybody go to his little hideaway in West Virginia or wherever it is. And he actually came out of hiding. They said they made up a set for him. So that was kind of interesting. Tim Pool, who used to be far left covering Occupy Wall Street, is now attending grassroots conservative events.
I'm not familiar with him, unfortunately.
Tim Pool's he's pretty popular. He's probably the 2nd or 3rd most popular podcaster out there right now.
Really?
Yeah, he's a big voice. He was an Occupy Wall Street reporter, did a little bit of network stuff briefly, and then just started his own channel, and it's really taken off.
I'm so caught up in things that I do. I don't spend a whole lot of time online with podcasters and things like that as much as I would like to. And why is my shirt bugging the crap out of me? But anyway, so I'm not familiar with a lot of these guys. There's another one that a couple friends of ours in our Constitution class have been trying to get me on, Justin something.
Yeah. In fact, we need to do that because she talked to me again, and she goes, "I got to quit asking. You need to get on him." So we do
and I'm just not tuned into the podcaster world like I probably should be. Because I've got, my own stuff that goes on. I spend, most of my time in that. Now, that said, get back to Harmeet Dillon. I have a unique perspective because I have a unique relationship. I've known her for a while. I'm not going to say we were friends or knew each other super well, but enough. We bumped into each other in enough circles. I had enough mutual friends that it's kind of like, when you're in the freedom movement, there are certain people you bump into often. And before she kind of started taking off, I bumped into her quite a bit. And she's also has worked quite a bit with Mark Moyser, who ran for Senate in this last election. And Mark Moyser is a likable fellow, and I like him. But as a constitutionalist, he's almost as far from understanding the Constitution as most of the people I can't stand. He and Harmeet Dillon together have basically said that the fraud in the election didn't happen, and it's a waste of time to look into it. And that was a part of the reason why I've kind of disconnected. Another reason is because when we approached her regarding the Kamala Harris lawsuit that I'm a part of, the response was essentially, it's just another birther lawsuit. There's no chance in hell, and I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I've also, of course, have had her say around me a number of what I would consider establishment things. She's a part of the network. She's a part of those who feed the Leviathan for the power and control. So I don't trust her. That's my personal opinion. I'm not going to slander her. I'm not going to say that she's anything other than I don't feel right about her, and I don't like the things she said. So please don't misunderstand me. And if you like her, great. If you trust her, fantastic. I don't.
Well, she's a lawyer.
Yeah.
And
so there you go. There's my thoughts in a nutshell, in a pistachio nutshell, of course.
Well, she's working closely with Moyser. That's that puts her into a certain category. That's kind of hard to explain away.
Yeah,
I met him on several occasions. He would not touch the more difficult questions. He was dancing around.
Yeah, raging smirk. Yeah, I'm assuming that was rhetorical, but I'll answer it anyway. Absolutely, Mike Lindell.
Well, the problem with that is I don't think it's realistic.
I'm not saying that he can get it. I understand, but it's always possible. No one thought Trump could either when it came to him running in 2016. So
yeah, but it's different when Trump is able to appeal to the people like Lindell does. But when you talk about running for GOP chair, you talk about 168 establishment politicians. I mean, that's what they are. They're machine operators, and the machine is broken.
That's why it really needs to be taken over from within.
Yeah, that's priesting. That's what the priesting strategy is all about. I mean, that's going to take several cycles. And
yeah, it's not going to be quick. You need to.
Oh, geez.
You need to ban whoever XXX69
I'm working on it. Hang on. It didn't show up on my YouTube, so I can't ban it.
Well, it's showing up in the private chat.
Yeah, I can't ban from the private chat.
It has to be Ronnie boy.
I don't know. I guess Ron can.
Well, then again, here, let me.
No, it's not hurting everyone. Hey, everybody!
If it's not showing up on YouTube, then it won't. How it's showing up on the private chat, I don't know.
Are you guys seeing it on the YouTube chat? Because I'm not. Sometimes that happens. Okay, Joy says it's not. Okay, that's weird. They only got in on stream.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the YouTube right now so I can take a look at both of them at the same time. All
right. I wonder how they get into stream but not YouTube. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting because I'm looking at both of them now and I can see the stream StreamYard and it's there, but I don't see it on the YouTube chat. That's interesting.
So it's just you and I. Okay, Doug, whatever you do, don't click on that link.
Yeah, no, see the good news, one of the things that keeps me honest is my wife knows how to look at the history on computer. She finally figured that out probably about 5 or 6 months ago, but that she failed to remember that I know how to look at the history, so I know everything she bought me for Christmas, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, either one of you guys figure out there's a button that says you can clear history?
Well, there is that, and there's also the what do you call it mode where it's what's it called, the in something incognito mode, where it doesn't show up on history. But don't think about that because you don't typically use it. Don't typically erase things, whatever. But anyway, that all said.
Hang on, I got something to show you.
Uh-oh. Got something to show me? It's a.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
You should be able to.
Something to show me.
All right, hang on. Let me try it again. There is a little bit of action going on at the border right this moment.
Oh, well, there was a little bit, almost potential action in the chat room too, but that's beside the point. Action at the border.
Can you see this?
No.
All right, this should be sharing.
Computer don't like you.
Nah. Well, shoot. Anyways, there's action at the border. There's looks like thousands of people on the Mexican side of the border, and hundreds of very well-armed National Guard on the Texas side of the border, and it is getting tense. So that is going on. That is going on in real time.
Now you're going to get everybody. You're going to get a kick out of this. I have been actually out of the loop all morning. I got up late. I slept very well last night. First time I slept a full night, and I can't think of how long. And then I started watching Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes. And so that's all I've been doing all day is working on some of my writing while watching Star Trek. So I literally have no clue what's going on. Good. Look up the Act of 1871. Thanks a lot, Darren. I've read it line by line and gone over it line by line on the air. Wow. So there's, I'm trying to find something on the border. I haven't found it yet, but
yeah, it was actually pretty funny. I was watching Bannon on the War Room, and there's one of the guests at the event made a comment about the U.S. corporation, and Bannon just completely dismissed it. You mean that 1876 corporation thing? Get out of here. Well, that's what I'm saying. What Bannon said, 1876.
Oh, okay.
I'm aware.
But,
okay. Bannon just completely dismissed it. So
right. Well, it needs to be dismissed. You and I have talked about it too, and I don't want to spend the show talking about it. So,
no.
But we'll.
No, we've been over that 2 minutes. We've been over that on this channel plenty of times.
Doug GTSY.
Get the. I don't know what that one means.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet either.
I'm sure we'll get an explanation. What do you want to talk about today? I already went over the Twitter stuff with Ron, so I'm not going to do that again.
Well, let's talk about Tucker Carlson a little bit.
Sure.
I watch Tucker a couple times a week. I don't watch every single episode, but I pick up when I can. I'm going to be watching Good to See You. Very good, Devil Dog. I thought you were putting that was gutsy, but hey, Good to See You is fine too. But Tucker, as much as I like to watch him, he's about the only person I watch, aside from maybe every once in a while, I've got a couple of other people I might throw up on my screen. Not throw up, but throw up on my screen. And but Tucker and Mark Levin are probably my two most common to watch. And Tucker is on a network that has been leaving its post a long time. It's been heading away from its post, its Patriot post, where it's supposed to be standing watch. Yet Tucker refuses to go with that network in that direction. And if anything, he's heading more in our direction. It's almost like he's in Discovery right now. And he's starting to put out things, though, that's, for lack of a better way of putting it, surprising me. The one you made me aware of, I didn't get a chance to watch yet, but I started watching it and then I got distracted, was the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah,
was the CIA in on it? Absolutely, he says, based on the evidence. We also said, and while I don't like his term democracy, I know what he thinks he means. Our federal republic is dead if, so let's put that instead of the word democracy. And he says you can't have a democracy in which unelected bureaucrats with guns control elected officials.
Well, that's you weren't here for this, but I'll repeat it.
Okay.
Today we had another Twitter files drop,
Right.
and the implications. There's a few, but the main thrust of today's show was the Pentagon has been using fake accounts, which they said they weren't doing. They were actually changing around basically to spread propaganda all over the world. A lot of it in the Middle East and other places where we've got military conflicts, some of it in
Right.
Russia, some in Ukraine. It was pretty damning, coupled with all the stuff we know about what the FBI was doing. What was interesting is the author who was doing the today's Twitter files. He basically said, "Yeah, all the I signed no contracts. I didn't make any agreements with Twitter. This is all my own writing. Because all the information that I got was handed to me. I would ask questions. I would say ask what I want, and the Twitter lawyer would give me, would do the searching. So he didn't get to access the raw data, and there's suspicion that Twitter may be holding some information back, some of the most damning stuff."
Well, what Tucker was referring to in his also is how the DOJ is in collusion with all of that.
Of course, it's a giant. The entire state is people. These are the Praetorian Guard of the Roman Empire. They're the ones who, Praetorian Guard used to be the ones who selected the new Caesar back in the days of the empire. That's what our state has become. And 20 years ago, you made more money in the private sector than the public. That is no longer the case. The amount of average net worth in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding areas has skyrocketed as government spending has gone up. Lobbyists make ridiculous amounts of money, but they are going to protect itself. So the question everyone is asking after today is, how do we fix this? You can't expect the federal government to rein itself in. It's not going to happen. Congress won't do it. They're part of the apparatus. They represent a national political cartel party system. They do not represent their local constituents. So the only way you're going to get this fixed is going to be for the states to do it. They're the only entities that have the power and the authority to do something about that.
Republic review is what my friend Mobley calls it. And it's where the states essentially take back their power. They take back their sovereignty. They start to
lost your volume.
We nullify it, and if you don't fix it, only like 13 or 14 of us can stop you with an amendment to the Constitution through a convention of states. Your call.
Well, we're still.
I think that's one of the ways we can address this. Real quick side note. Okay, so Darren, USA Inc. Act of 1871. I'm going to do a video sometime this week or next week on this because there's been so much coming up, and I've already talked about it, so I'm not going to clog this show with it. So here's my suggestion: you go to youtube.com/Douglas V. Gibbs, youtube.com/Douglas V. Gibbs, and or bitshoot.com/Douglas V. Gibbs, and also go to my Rumble at Douglas V. Gibbs, because I'm gonna put it on all three of them, and I'm gonna do a video on this so that you people like you may watch it. Then we could talk about it, because if I sit here for the next hour explaining it again, it's going to be for you and not the rest of the audience. The rest of the audience came here for other things. But I want to give you this opportunity. That's the reason why I'm setting aside a couple minutes to tell you this. I want you to have that opportunity to see fully what I've got to say. All right. Very good. All right. Sorry about that. I just felt it needed to be addressed.
So there's another bombshell related to government malfeasance. I'm such a tough time with that word today. Here in Just the News, Devin Nunes is accusing the Department of Justice of seeking blackmail material during the Russia probe after the bombshell revelation. So basically, they were going after Nunes' staff. And we already knew that they were wiretapping not just Nunes, but reporters like John Solomon, Dan Bongino, and several others who actually call out, some of this government misbehavior, shall we call it.
Right.
So they are going to. They've shown a willingness to use the full power of the state to go against their political enemies, and this is not a Republican or a Democrat thing. This is the tyrannical state itself. They're not going to just say sorry and stop it. They've, pretty much all of the, everything they're doing now is to cover up something they did before, which was to cover up something they did before. And it goes back to before Donald Trump even came down the escalator. The weaponization of the intelligence agencies through the Patriot Act, it started under Bush and really got weaponized under Obama. And then you go back to the Kennedy assassination. Some people say that, basically the intelligence arms committed a coup in 1963 when they shot Kennedy. And that's entirely possible that that's the case. Where it started, it's hard to say.
All right. Something else that's in the news right now is, I'm just curious your thoughts about this.
Doug, your voice cut out. Doug, start over. Doug, can you start that whole thing over? Can you start that whole thing over? I didn't get a word. Your whole voice cut out.
Yeah, that's weird. I saw my whole picture blank out and everything, and I don't have anything up, so I don't know why it did that. Zelensky is going to be visiting the United States Capitol on Wednesday.
I have not heard that. He's probably pick up a couple more awards. Time Magazine's Man of the Year, Zelensky.
No, it's to meet congressional leaders, according to The Guardian.
I haven't really done the background on the Ukrainian war for this group. So let me do that real quick. And that'll tell you what I think about Zelensky coming to visit. So in 2014, with the help of the United States Department, and CIA, the Orange Revolution happened. How do we know that the State Department and CIA were involved on it? We've got Victoria Nuland, number 2 at the State Department, 2-minute audio of her on a phone call with Jeffrey Payet, who was their Ukrainian ambassador, picking and choosing who the new Ukrainian prime minister was going to be and the other power slots. This is not deniable. This is factual evidence. They did that because the president at the time, not Poroshenko, I forgot his name. Anyways, he was from the eastern part of Ukraine, which is Russia-speaking, had been in negotiations to get tighter ties with the European Union.
You're breaking up really rough. I think we both are issues.
Okay, how am I doing now? Long story short, the Ukraine shifted the Ukraine towards Russia and away from the EU, which is why he had to be toppled. Since that time,
can you beam me back on, or does it have to be Ron?
I think Ron has to. I don't have any controls.
Okay, because I'll actually exit and come back.
I don't think. Okay, we'll make sure you get Ron on there. I'll finish this monologue. So, since 2014, the Ukrainians, Nazi battalions, have been waging war against the Russian section of the country. It's been a civil war. It's been quietly sanctioned by whoever's in power. There was a gentleman by the name of Ihor Kolomoisky, who's a very wealthy oligarch in the Ukraine, owns about 9 television stations. He also owned a bank called Privatbank. So when the United States gives our foreign aid, the money gets deposited in the Privatbank, and about 90% of it did. Privatbank's supposed to give out loans. That's how U.S. aid works. So it turned out that Privatbank was giving loans to Kolomoisky's shell companies. He was moving the money over to Cyprus, and eventually it gets money laundered back here in the United States. So now Kolomoisky owns about 50% of the skyline in Cleveland, Ohio, and a whole bunch of commercial real estate in Louisville, Kentucky. So Poroshenko comes in as president, and the U.S. does some anti-corruption stuff, and somehow he finds his bank taken away from him. He didn't like that, so he decided to run his own candidate, this guy by the name of Zelensky, who was an actor on one of Kolomoisky's television networks, played the role of a president. And that's how Zelensky got elected. He was a puppet for Kolomoisky. Fast forward to February of the Russian invasion happened in February of 2024. So why did it happen, and why did it happen then? Well, 1 year previously, Zelensky had made public statements about taking back Crimea. That's pretty bad news for Russia. They're not going to let that happen. And they even started moving troops that direction. Well, there's been ongoing bombardments in against eastern Ukraine, the Russian-speaking parts, and that's tracked by there's a third-party independent watchdog group. They've been tracking in the 10 days right before the Russian invasion. The attacks started building up in Ukraine. I mean, it went from like 50 bombs going off a day to like 500 to like 1,500, and that's a huge escalation. And that's really what triggered the invasion at the time. Zelensky had troop movements going that direction. They were escalating the war, and it looked like Zelensky was going to initiate a hot war. A couple other interesting things happened. The chief inspector of the nuclear, I forget the name of the nuclear agencies, whatever, the Nuclear Watchdog International, basically stated last year that Zelensky or the Ukraine had built up enough fissile nuclear material to build several bombs, and that's not okay. And if you remember, the Russians, one of the very first things they did is they went and got the nuke plants. So that's another possible reason for the war. And of course, then everyone's heard about the biolabs. So there's a lot of reasons for why that started. Zelensky's been, look, they should have had a peace deal a long time ago. These separatist regions of Ukraine had every reason to not want to be governed by the rest of Ukraine. We respect that in other areas, but the U.S. State Department did not want that. Our foreign policy has been very aggressive to Russia. In 1991, James Baker promised, when they tore down the Berlin Wall, he basically said NATO's not going to go 1 inch closer to Russia. And since then, we've added 14 different nations into NATO, each one of them incrementally closer to the Russian border. That's probably, that's a poke in the eye of Russia. We keep poking the bear, something's going to happen. Here's the other fun part. To explain Russia's foreign policy, there's something called the Primakov Doctrine, and you should all look this one up. It's worth reading. It's basically Primakov wrote how Russia should handle its foreign policy, and Putin is definitely a Primakov disciple. And the very first pillar of that is to escape from what he calls the monopolar, rules-based Anglo-American transatlantic order. And that's basically what they've accomplished with these sanctions. Is Russia is now outside the dollar system. And a multipolar world could be a good thing. We actually have competition. Competition has a tendency to make governments more responsible, not less. So that's basically Russia is, I'm not going to say I see that in the chat. I'm not going to say they're the good guys, but the United States is definitely not the good guys here. There would have been peace months and months ago if the U.S. hadn't kept funding the Ukraine, and they're just losing lives daily, and depending on what news source you believe in for the actual casualties, what have you, or any reporting on the war. I try to get news from all over the world and try to figure out which one's the most accurate. But it seems to me that with this new Russian buildup, which they could be ready for an attack anytime now, we're just throwing money away, bad money after bad, good money after bad. The results are probably inevitable that Russia is going to get the territory they want. The question is, how much is Ukraine going to have to suffer to get to that point? And I'd rather have them do it at the negotiating table. But America does not want that. Now, is it connected at all to impeachment 1.0 and the Hunter Biden's job with Burisma? Well, perhaps. Guess who used to own Burisma? Yeah, Ihor Kolomoisky. Yeah, he used to own the oil company that hired Hunter Biden for $83,000 a month in a job that he knew nothing about. So, Brave Ministry says, remember, Trump is good friends with Putin. I don't know if that's entirely accurate. I think they've met maybe twice, but I don't know how good of a friendship you can get with that. But I think there's probably mutual respect, and I think which would be good enough for me. Hey, Dougie's back.
Yeah, well, I don't know why the other computer was having problems, the one I always use. So what I did is I put it on my desktop, which is a kick-butt computer, does wonderfully, but because it's connected to the internet through, because it doesn't have a capability of Wi-Fi and the router is in a different room, I actually have a special plug in my room that connects it to the router through the electrical wire, plugs in, and then it's weird. And so on rare occasions, I'll lose connectivity for a moment. So that's why I usually don't use this computer for live stuff. But it's actually the better, faster, stronger, sexier computer.
Well, your timing is good because I just finished up my little short history of Ukraine. Do you guys like it? How'd I do, everyone?
And I'm pretty aware of it, so you probably said most of what I'm aware of.
Well, you've heard me give. Well, I guess you went. I usually do those. I usually give those presentations when you're out of town, so you haven't heard me. I've been periodically doing it. Anyways, to answer your question, Zelensky is a clown. He's a bad actor. You know how a guy who used to be a TV actor is now worth $600 million or something like that, and that came out in the Paradise Papers several years ago. You know, so how much of the U.S. aid money is he scraping off the top? You know, it's the most corrupt country in the Northern Hemisphere for a reason. But you still drive by a house and you'll see a Ukrainian flag out in the window. So whatever. That was some serious misinformation. In fact, wouldn't that be great if Elon Musk revealed how they were, censoring anti-Ukraine messages and pushing the pro-Ukraine? Because I bet that was happening.
And I bet it's there. It's just a matter of it working its way to the surface. Yeah. And when I talk about this topic, because it can be for friends of mine who are originally from Ukraine and Russia and all that, can be a very touchy subject. And so I always try to qualify it with I have no problem with the people. I feel bad for the people.
Oh, absolutely.
The people of Ukraine are good people, and I think the people of Russia are good people. But you've got two political entities that aren't. I don't know how else to put it. And Ukraine has the history of being the mobsters of the world, so to speak, from a political standpoint. So, you got to go with what history and the geopolitical barometer tells you.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of good actors that are right now that are in a position of being heads of country or forming policy. I think the system's been so corrupted, and a lot of it comes from the United Nations. And I wanted to share a little factoid with you.
Okay.
Reason number 1485A for why we should not be in the UN. How many votes, Doug, does the United States get in the United Nations?
As compared to the rest of the world, the same as everybody else, right? One.
Well, not the same as everybody else.
No,
because there's 52 countries in the British Commonwealth. So when England,
I hadn't thought of that. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got one. They've got 52. The allies of China, or Russia, have theirs. Interesting. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yep. You should take
a look at them. Fell into that one, didn't I, folks?
I teed it up for you. No, it's perfect. Teed it up perfectly. Now, when I looked at that statistic, I had explained so much. It's. We always talk about our greatest ally being England and everything like that. But when you start poking through the history of how much they've manipulated us over the years, they put us into every war.
Right.
Here's another fun little factoid for you. In 1915, J.P. Morgan and a bunch of shipping and steel magnates pooled their money together and bought 25 of the biggest newspapers in America for the sole purpose of pushing America into World War I. It was propaganda. Purchased, basically the rich people decided they wanted to be war profiteers. And lo and behold, 2 years later, we're in World War I.
Now, I'm looking for my book, but go ahead.
That actually came out in congressional testimony in 1917 and was used as an argument about not going into the war. But then obviously that changed after they sunk a ship again.
Yeah, I've got that book around here somewhere, but Curtis B. Dawes, my, whatever father-in-law, FDR, I can't remember the proper name off the top of my head, but he says that when, there it is. I knew it was somewhere close. FDR, My Exploited Father-in-Law by Curtis B. Dawes.
Mm-hmm.
On page 137, when Curtis B. Dawes writes about a gentleman he talked to who was in the room back in 1912 when Woodrow Wilson was being indoctrinated for his position to become president. He was given a list of 5 things that he needed to understand, support, be agree to in principle to, and the 1, 2, 3, 4th one down of the 5. If called upon to lend a sympathetic ear and aid indicated policy if war should break out in Europe. This is long before a Serbian prince was shot. This is long before everybody in the rest of the world. I mean, those rumblings going on. Everybody knew something was bad, but these guys were sure of it. Interesting. Mm-hmm. They knew the war was coming. It's almost like, I hate to say this, Brady, like it was part of the plan.
Gee, go figure. Following year, 1913, we get the Federal Reserve to fund a war effort. That worked out well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't have time on this show for me to do that full history, but yeah, it's an interesting one. And the British MI6 was the first real government intelligence agency, and that was made up of a bunch of London bankers. And they helped us set up the OSS and the CIA, which were basically a bunch of Wall Street lawyers. And that's Sullivan and Cromwell, which I always talk about. And the Israeli Mossad comes shortly thereafter once Israel became a country. And so those 3 worked very closely together. They have some amazingly interesting ties to the same offshore banking network as is used by organized crime and the global narcotics and human trafficking criminals. These are the same people. They work in the same shadowy, back streets. Intelligence is organized crime, and that's why you will find that our border, they fought so hard to keep the border open. That's how they fund. They are a self-funding mechanism. Right. And it started with MI6 and the Brits, a bunch of London bankers, Council of 300.
Now I want to take a moment to pause here for a second, because see, there are people in my life who are quote unquote conspiracy theorists. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this ties into the conspiracies people believe. And your conspiracy theories have a lot of truth to them. It doesn't mean that certain things, though, are necessarily true. Remember, I'm a conspiracy factualist, and I believe Brady to be the same. So when we talk about this stuff, I want you to dissect what you believe, take out what's true, and separate what's speculative. Now, I'm not saying the speculative parts of it are for sure untrue, but they're not grounded in fact that we know of. And so I want you to become a conspiracy factualist. Most constitutionalists try to be, and historians try to be based on fact. I do know sometimes we don't have the whole story, and speculation is fun. And sometimes we do speculate, and sometimes our speculation is in the right neighborhood, but let's be very careful with it. Let's make sure that we understand the difference between the facts and what's speculation. And, and that goes into the corporation theory, goes in all kinds of things. I want us to recognize, yes, Britain has, since day one, tried to manipulate us and so on and so forth. Missing, 13th Amendment's a part of that, and so on and so forth. But at the same token, that doesn't mean that we have sold our soul to the Bank of London per se. In ways we have, but not in the way that some of the conspiracy theories make it out to be. So I just want you put on your critical thinking cap, folks, your logic cap and your critical thinking cap, and really think deeply about this stuff. Because if you're gonna put up with me, you're gonna have to put up with. I don't chase after anything unless it's grounded in fact as I can see it. And I apologize for doing a little PSA there, but I really do think it's important for us to recognize that. Go ahead.
No, and I agree. And that's one of the things you've heard me talk about as well. Every single thing I just stated is a documented fact. When I'm going to give an opinion, I will say I'm speculating. I'm very careful with my language.
Right.
And I've been critical of others who don't do that, as we've talked about ad nauseum. You can't throw out a theory as fact unless you can document it. Right. I just read a lot of books, and I do a whole lot of homework. And when it's when you got when you see the actual documentation that ties all the things together, there is not speculation. This stuff happened.
Yeah, and what the truth is somewhere between the people who refuse to listen to conspiracy theorists and those who are fully embedded in conspiracy theory. The truth is somewhere in between.
Yeah, and Lucy, to what Lucy Bird is saying, sometimes it proves your speculation is correct, but sometimes it proves your speculation was wrong, and that's one of my favorite things in this journey is to be proven wrong, because that means I learned something new, and that's a good thing. I mean, I've been wrong about a number of my theories, but I don't come on here with I'll tell you if it's a theory, if it's documented historical fact.
Well, let's take one on just to use as an example. Thank you, Darren, for providing that at the very bottom of the chat. Birth certificate system. We are all owned and traded, and that is fact. Is it fact?
That they are owned and traded. Well, I've had a Bloomberg terminal on my desk for most of the last 22 years, and I have looked for anyway. Bloomberg terminal tracks every financial transaction in the world. I've never seen a birth certificate. So if it is being bought and sold, it sure as heck doesn't have a record of it. And nobody that I know has ever seen it. I've been to the website where people say allegedly you type in your birth certificate, you can find out what you're worth. That's a spoof. I forget what the name of the site is. I had it bookmarked once upon a time. So no, I do not believe the birth certificate system. But I understand where that one comes from.
Yeah, now you're not just being speculative. You're in an industry where you can take a look.
Yeah, it's called a QSIP number. Every single security has a QSIP number, and I type it into Bloomberg, and nothing comes up. And I've tried out with a number of people's birth certificates. So,
but the person in the chat says, and that is fact.
That's because
that's my point. It's just because someone says something is a fact. Don't always necessarily. I mean, and I'm not picking. I don't want to pick on you, Darren. I appreciate you, and you're here just about every week, and I appreciate you. But I just want us to once again, if I'm going to play the game, I better play it by the rules, and I better know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I tend not to chase stuff that I don't have the facts on.
So to state it correctly, if there were such a birth certificate trading system, I should be able to find it, and I cannot.
Okay.
So my opinion is that it does not exist. I do not know that for a fact. I can't prove a counterfactual.
But you can't prove it isn't, but you can't prove it is.
Yeah, well, I looked to try to prove it is, and I could not do it. I failed. Okay. So my response is that it is likely not true. But yeah, that's a really good example, and I'm glad Darren brought that one up.
Now that said, Lucy Bird, right above Darren, says it is good to speculate because when you do so, other people start to wonder and do research and often prove that speculation was correct. That is true, but don't present speculation as fact. Present it as speculation. Okay.
All right, fun stuff. We got some other good stuff in the news. Oh, here's a great example of that. The J6 committee has now referred Donald Trump for criminal referrals. And of course, a certain portion of our country is saying, yeah, we got him now. There's no guarantee whatsoever that the Department of Justice is even going to act on it. These are just referrals. This is not a criminal investigation that Congress did. They don't have that kind of power. And it's very likely that there's absolutely, there's very little that could actually be charged. But it makes for great headlines and a beautiful distraction from all the other stuff that's coming out. So that will stay in the news. I had speculated that they were doing the criminal referrals so that they would get to the special counsel and they could cover up. They wouldn't have to release those other 14,000 hours of videotape that happened on January, because they were going to say, oh, due to ongoing criminal investigation, we can't share that information.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. They've done that before. They did that with the Russiagate documents. Nope, sorry. For 2 years, Mueller had all the information. Nobody else could see it. And that's why Devin Nunes is such a hero for uncovering everything like he did. Right. That's why the intel agencies went after Devin Nunes' staff. I liked Devin Nunes. I'm disappointed that he left Congress.
A question for you, since this is kind of in your realm. The Dow has been on a 4-day losing streak. It did end on a slight high after that 4-day losing streak. Is the Dow a a critical thing for us to be looking at when judging what's going on with the economy, or is it something that we shouldn't spend as much time worried about?
It's both. I barely look at the markets on a daily basis. I always tell people that if you ask me what the market's going to do in the next day, next week, next month, or next year, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you in 10 years it's going to go up. And that's a function of, generally the general direction of the economy is to grow and profits to grow, but also because every single day you've got money going into the market through 401k, 403b, and other contributions. Right. These are automatic buyers. They go into index funds. And the problem with this is your index funds, it is a market cap weighted vehicle, meaning say it's $1 billion a day is going into the market. All these mutual fund managers, and they have to buy the index because that's what they're, that's the judge on their performance basis the index. So it means more money goes into the biggest companies every day than the smaller companies in the S&P 500.
Okay.
Well, when this drives up the price. If you talk about PE ratio, price earnings, if your price is going up and the E hasn't changed, what you now have is a cycle that leads to overvaluation. So the natural tendency of the market is to go up just because of money flows. And once those valuations get too high, about once a decade, the people in the know probably pull the plug and we get a nice market crash.
So it sounds like watching the Dow watching for economic fluctuations could be an indicator, but it's not necessarily the indicator. Just because it does something doesn't mean for sure a certain thing's going to happen.
Yeah, but it's because the market does not move on purely fundamentals. There are other things that moves the markets up. Right. Now the bond market is what I watch. The bond market is always far smarter than the stock market. It's much better as a predictor of bad events, for sure. And there's a reason for it. If you look at a if you look at a stock analyst, his job is to look at a company, figure out if they do everything right, what could it be worth? He's an optimist. He's looking for the best case scenario. Well, the bond analyst is buying debt, and he wants to make sure these companies are going to be able to pay him back. He's looking for what the worst case scenario can be. What would cause these guys not to be able to pay me back? Well, he's a pessimist. So I'm going to trust the pessimist over the optimist every single time. It's much more critical thinkers in the bond market, if that makes sense.
All right, very good. Now, earlier you had mentioned the border and what's going on at the border. And I'm going to assume some of that is surrounding the debate on whether or not to end Title 42 or keep the hold on it that the Supreme Court just did. 19 states on Monday asked the Supreme Court to prevent the lifting of Title 42. Title 42, for those of you who are not sure, it's basically a administrative thing that was put in place during the scamdemic pandemic to make sure that we protected ourselves from persons coming into the country that may be infected. And it's still in place, and it's one of the few things that's protecting the border from being pretty much thrown completely wide open the way I'm understanding it. What is your thought, sir?
Yeah, it's funny that we're actually arguing. You got to keep this COVID measure in place.
Yeah, no, it is kind of funny.
But hey, whatever it takes. The Supreme Court needs to be involved in this border war, even though this debate over whether to enforce the borders. It is unforgivable that they've. The law is in place that we have to protect the border, and they're just ignoring it. Interestingly enough, there's 19 states that signed that went to the Supreme Court to get to protect the borders. You want to know which state was not on that list? Florida.
Interesting.
Yeah. Good old Ronnie D didn't show up for that one.
Very interesting. All right. Right on. So do you think that is as I mentioned earlier, a great impact on why we're having that confrontation? I'm still looking for information about the confrontation that's going on right now at the border and all the people are there. But do you think that's a primary impact, or is there?
Yeah,
aside from the fact that Biden, let's keep the borders as open as we can, it's president. But
Yeah, it's people were lining up at the Mexican border. I mean, I saw some videotape of a woman going down there was interviewing some of these people. They're from all over the world. They
Right.
were lining up waiting for Title 42 to expire. So this had to be done.
All right. So the Title 42 you would say then is a primary factor there.
100%. That's that they were predicting numbers that were going to be like 3 to 5 times more than they've ever seen before.
Well, it's amazing how in tune with American politics the illegal alien is.
Well, there's a reason for that. We have American NGOs or international NGOs down there helping these people, busting them all over the place, giving them their information, telling them what to do when you get to the border. They're getting coached the whole way. So nobody talks about that. How are these people getting that information? Yeah, these are Soros type groups. There's all kinds of them. There's Catholic charities involved in that. Here's a fun one on that same subject. They are just getting ready to pass this ridiculous omnibus spending bill before the Republicans take over.
Right.
Well, there's a really fun list of the things that the DHS and the Border Patrol can't do. None of the money, you can spend money to help with your processing, but you can't spend any more money on border enforcement. That's in the omnibus bill. Yeah. I've got that up on my other computer. Otherwise, I would pull it up right now if I could. So, I don't know what can the Supreme Court do to force us to, let's say this, they're going to have to hear an emergency case. How can you force the administration to enforce the border, or can they?
It's funny because I finally found an article about all these people lining up the border that's recent, within the last 12 hours. And I had to leave the country to find it. Outlook, which is from India. That's the place I found it. Thousands of people are preparing to illegally enter the United States from the U.S.-Mexican border in Texas. Migration restrictions called Title 42 are ending on December 21st, tomorrow. And as many as 5,000 people a day are preparing to cross into the United States then. Officials are planning provisions for emergency housing, food, and other essentials to the migrants. So notice, it's not, we better do something to, stem this tide. No, it's like, hey, we better pull out as much benefits and housing and food and help as we can. And the question is then goes back to the Trump era and something that Trump had said. Who's mixed into those crowds? What kind of people were mixed into those crowds? Now, our former president, number 45, would tell you that what's mixed into that group of people are rapists, criminals, and so on and so forth. Of course, when he said that, then he was accused of saying that about all Mexicans. Well, first of all, the people wanting to come into the country is not all Mexican. Number two, that is very much a valid statement. There is a dangerous segment in that population that wants to come into this country. You know how I know? Because even the lefties know it, because that's why they lock their door at night and during the day, because that element exists in our world. If you didn't, you wouldn't be locking your car and you wouldn't be locking your house. And as I told an NAACP crowd one time, when they were asking me about immigration, did you lock your door before you came here? Why did you lock it? Because that element's out there. And even when you're home and someone knocks, you don't just throw the door open and come on in. You vet that person before they come in. That's all immigration is. For you that may not necessarily agree with us, that's watching this, need to understand. Immigration policies are like your front door at your house. You don't just let anybody in. You want to vet them. Hey, anybody's allowed to knock. And if they pass that vetting process, anybody's allowed to come into your home, right? If they pass the vetting process. Some of you might have tighter restrictions than others. Some of you might only want family to come in your house. Some of them are a little bit more liberal. Some of them might even let the guys that wear white shirts and black ties and carry a Bible come on in and have a discussion. I don't know, but you vet them before you do it, regardless of who you are. Everybody does. And
yeah, I love that analogy.
Point.
That's a good analogy. Hey, yeah, you know which Supreme Court justice issued the stay of the Title 42, don't you?
No, I don't. And if you say Roberts, I'm gonna laugh out loud.
You're gonna get ready to laugh. It was Roberts.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was probably who it was. I don't know if it's almost like he's not really sure who he wants to make happy anymore. But anyway.
Well, I got to, you know my theory on Roberts. He's, I know people think he's compromised. They would blackmail him, or there's something to do with his adoption.
I've thought that. I don't know for sure, but I have had those thoughts for sure.
Yeah, the two main theories. There's something off with his adoption. I think it was Irish children, And the other thing is there is a Jay Roberts on the Epstein flight logs. Okay, so those are valid theories they're based on potential merit, and we don't know the answer. But I read a book about the Supreme Court a while back, about 10 years ago, that kind of discussed who Roberts really was. And it described him as an incrementalist. He wanted to do everything in small steps. He didn't like making big changes. And he had a huge reliance on precedents. And the other thing is he had an almost unhealthy fixation on what his legacy was going to be. And he wanted to be loved by all. So when he makes decisions that are perplexing, and then he turns around and makes good decisions, that may explain it. It may be just that innocent. That's who he is.
Well, that's kind of what saved us from Bill Clinton going completely off the rails. Is he cared about his legacy, so he decided to work with the Republicans on a few things to save his legacy. Right. But then when you come to legacy, someone like Obama, it wasn't that he didn't care about his legacy. He wanted his legacy to be the one that he was the one that pushed us towards where we're going. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah, the big thing with Roberts is, right now there's theoretically a 6-3 conservative advantage in the Supreme Court, so Roberts' vote doesn't matter as much. Mm-hmm. I actually want him to be in the minority as often as possible on the cases we care about, because the last thing I want is him writing his opinion.
Right.
And, he's because he will always go milquetoast on the opinion. We have the opportunity to make to really do something for states' rights or for smaller government. So that's my biggest thing with Roberts, is just don't write opinions. Well, we're at the 4:02 hour. Do you want to go for a few more minutes, or?
Yeah, because I don't have a classic Capistrano tonight, and I did show up a handful of minutes late. It's funny. I don't use, like I said earlier, I use my laptop typically for my live stuff. Be honest with me, my laptop is starting to get overloaded with stuff. I am. If I had enough money, I'd go out there and get myself a gamer's laptop. I'm not there yet, but I do have a desktop that kicks rear. Maybe I should start using it more often. I get paranoid because sometimes I'm watching movies through my streaming service on it. The internet will go out on it for like 5 minutes or something like that because of the stupid way I've got to plug it in. But it definitely can handle the stream much better. I'm sure you guys have noticed I'm clearer than usual now that I'm using this computer for this particular episode. That all said, let's do this, if you don't mind. And this is kind of interesting because we've got a Democrat Congress right now doing everything it can to get everything in place it can, knowing that the Republicans will take control of the House in January. And the good news is, what we would call conservatives in the Republican Party, I know you're not a fan of that word, but I'm going to use it because that's what everybody uses we know, we've got the left doing everything they can to attack those who are daring to stand in the way as they put out all of this garbage. And my favorite is a headline that's from the Daily Signal. This has got to stop. GOP lawmakers slam Democrat-led efforts to pass massive spending bill. And this is about spending bill. This is just one of many things going through. And the conservatives are trying to rally to do what they can to stop the ridiculousness that's going on. Some of the Republicans are jumping ship, as we expect, because they're part of the Leviathan. They feed the Leviathan. They feed the same trough. They drink the same trough. So I get that. The thing is, the woke priorities in the omnibus bill is out of control. It is not just a budget bill. It's got stuff in there that push the less extreme agenda on how to use your money. And fortunately, there's enough Republicans saying, no, this is junk. We're not good with it. I mean, at this moment, it's a battle. And so it increases discretionary spending by 9%. It's a massive $1.82 trillion bill. I remember when we thought it was when they were talking billions. This is a $1.82 trillion bill. Increases base discretionary spending by 9%. 7% increase that's on top of the 7% increase they rammed through last year. And the American people, if they knew what was in this,
yeah, let me give you a couple examples of this 4,155-page bill.
okay.
We got a 575.
Mind you, it passed 71-19 in the Senate.
Yeah, I don't know if the House can stop it or not, and I hope they can. But this is terrible. It'll be the worst spending bill ever. Let me give you a couple examples. I just had this up a second ago. For $575 million for quote unquote family planning in areas where population growth threatens biodiversity. It's a Malthusian anti-human ideology. Wait, I got a few more. There's a huge Twitter thread done by Rep. Dan Bishop from North Carolina. Apparently, he's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, he also talks about the Border Patrol funding. It expressly prohibits Border Patrol funding from being used to improve border security. Specifically, none of the funds provided in subsection A1 shall be used to acquire, maintain, or extend border security technology and capabilities, except for technology and capabilities to improve Border Patrol processing. So they're just flat out legislating.
All you need to know is this. It's 4,155 pages long. Now, I want you to help you digest that. 4,155 pages long. The Bible, the Holy Bible, is 1,200 pages long with your standard printings. So this is it's 3.5 times, about 3.5 times the size of the Bible. All right. It makes the IRS code look like a short paperback novel. It makes Obamacare. I can't remember how long Obamacare was, but I think this is longer than Obamacare. It's crazy. And so now here's the thing. Right now, as they monkey with it in the House, if they're making changes, it will have to go back to the Senate.
That's a good point. That's a huge hope because, don't spending bills have to initiate in the House? Or maybe this one did.
They initiate in the House, but the same bill has to be agreed on by both houses. So Senate can make amendments to it, but it has to be initiated. Its very, very first placement has to be in the House, which, according to its number, this was HR 2617.
Okay.
We've got basically it's going to add, according to I'm trying to remember now the guy. One of the congressmen was asked about this, and I was reading about this earlier, and it said it was going to add like over $2.5 trillion to the national credit card. Well, and I've been told that the after they're done with the amendments, it's going to be over 6,000 pages, nearly 7,000 pages.
Well, they've got to get this done by Friday. Is that right?
Is that true? No, I don't know that.
Because the new Congress gets sworn in on January 3rd, and the old one goes on vacation.
Okay, yeah. All right, you're right. Wow, I forgot that's that close to the end of the year.
Yeah, that's a big holiday coming up this weekend.
Yeah, something called Christmas. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure DC's it goes on vacation like on Friday. It's the last day. So
all right,
they got 3 days to keep that from happening. And by the way, I think it's criminal. But with all these revelations coming out from the Twitter files and some other things, the CIA with JFK and all that, if we do get to Article 5 convention, when you talk about a runaway convention, I'm praying for that. I want this. There's a lot of this government that just needs to be totally blown up, and I don't mean that. Don't mean that in a physical way. I'm not saying go out and get some TNT or dynamite. Nobody gets blown up. We don't need to do that, but we do need to just strip this thing back down to the size it needs to be. I don't know how they're going to solve this budget problem. I mean, I don't think it can be paid for a debt that big.
Well, I think we have some wise people in our chat room. So Lucy Bird says they calculated that you would have to read 47 pages an hour until Friday due date, but without stopping, no sleep. And then Joy says, well, if you can't read it, vote no until you can. Exactly.
Yeah, if they had integrity, they would. I mean, that's always been the case.
Yeah.
Look, the founding document of our country is this big. It's a little pamphlet. It's just, to me, that's one of the greatest examples of just how off the rails this government, has gotten. There's just no need for that level of complexity. And unless you really think it's that important to keep thousands of lawyers employed, because that's who writes these things.
Yeah, and I was looking it up earlier, but I couldn't find it. But I remember reading a quote by Jefferson at one point that basically said that if a law is voluminous, in other words, too long, then it's likely full of deception. That's the reason why they do that. And he said that no law should be, that long, to say the least. So,
there's all kinds of legislative fixes if they had the will to do it, but that's what do I always say? Our representatives do not represent us; they represent a national political cartel, and that is owned by these multinational corporations. These people are not writing bills. There's not a congressperson who's written a bill in ages. It's written by lobbyists and their lawyers. Well, 4:15 or 4:12. You want to?
Yeah, I think it might be time to put an end to this particular episode. Didn't talk about the Constitution as much as I would like, but that's going to change after the first of the year, folks. And when we get to the first episode, so that'll be January 3rd, we are going to start over from the beginning of the Constitution, preamble. So if you're like, hey man, why don't we talk about we wanted to time it with the first of the year, and I want you all to be a part of the ride, and I want you to bring aboard people. If you've talked to people about what I do or what Brady and I do or what Brady and I and Ron do, it's really the three of us going through the Constitution, and you've told people, say, yeah, it was really good. They say, I'd rather wait till they start from the beginning, even though everybody knows you can go back to the beginning through YouTube, but that's beside the point. Tell them on the 3rd, we start at the beginning. And the great thing about this time starting from the beginning is there's a whole new set of political issues and news items that will influence the discussions. So yes, it is the Constitution line by line, going through the Constitution line by line. But as we go through these pages line by line, we're also drawing from current concepts, news items, and so forth to help explain it. And so I want as many people on board as possible. We all need to be participating in this education, because an informed society becomes a free society if their society is out of whack, if their system's out of whack. Matter of fact, I have to admit, I kind of stole that from this guy named, you may have heard of him, James Madison. James Madison said, a well-instructed people alone can be permanently a free people. You want to fight the good fight? Great. But know what you're fighting for. Be informed. And so on January 3rd, we begin again from the beginning. Each episode, hour by hour, once a week, Tuesdays at 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern, right here at MrConstitution.com, hyphen between the Mr. and the Constitution. This YouTube page, share it with your friends. Let's get as many people watching as possible. This is give me a Christmas gift on January 3rd. I'm asking for a gift. I want you guys to give me that gift. Let's get as many people watching this as possible, because we all need to know this information. We really need to be going through this. And the great part about it is, if you're in the chat, even you, Darren, because we love you so much, you can ask the questions you want to ask as long as they're on topic about what we're talking about. If you have a question, go, Doug, I'm not getting it. I'm sorry. I don't understand. Here's my question. You can pose it if you're watching live. Not watching live, no problem. You can watch it later. It is YouTube after all. So once again, final plea, let's bring as many people as we can, because the country's worth it.
Merry Christmas to everybody. I will look. Well, we're not doing a class next week, Doug, or we are?
Yeah, I think we ought to. Well, it's not really. You talking about here?
This for here. On the show.
I'm doing no live classes this week or next week out there where I go to classes. But right here, I would like to be here. I am outside my my routine, so somebody might need to remind me ahead of time. But I apologize about this afternoon when this thing was starting. I was like, I was in so many different zones. I just, whoop. But it's because I'm outside my normal routine. But yeah, I want to be here next week. Let's have one more. Let's talk about whatever we want to talk about show next week, and maybe even do a little bit of introduction to the Constitution before we get started on the 3rd. In other words, talk a little about history. Maybe talk about a little bit about, I don't know, how the banking system started in the 1600s, things like that.
Oh, goodness. Maybe I can come up with some more fun factoids about the United Nations for you.
Yeah, there's all kinds of fun stuff. So Merry Christmas. Appreciate you guys. Love you. And I tell this to my classes that I visit and teach live to, and I'm starting to feel this way about you guys. This isn't just a class, right? We're family. It's a community. Let's look out for each other. All right, go ahead, sir. You can wrap it up for us.
Oh no, that's you get to do the sign off, man.
That's right. I got my usual sign off that my friend Alan Myers loves so much too. United we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. Thanks for spending the time with us, and we'll see you next time right here. Thanks. Merry Christmas.
Cheers, everyone. And I'm just going to sign out of live.